I think that people who are familiar with our company know that we tend to create architectures and then we stay with a type of architecture for a long period of time and we refine it.
Alexandria X2 was introduced to the world in 2003. It was, at the time, the purest expression of Dave Wilson's vision of a loudspeaker that could reproduce the emotional intensity of a live musical event. 4 years later, the bar was raised with the Series 2. And now, 4 years after that, the next stage in the evolution of the Alexandria platform. But the Alexandria XLF was conceived as neither refinement nor replacement for the Series 2. It is an entirely new loudspeaker on a new plane of performance.
It's big, it has a grandeur to it, and yet it's able to resolve almost like a mini monitor at times in terms of its sound staging. There's better harmonic expression. The dynamic contrasts are wider. The settling is even deeper on this XLF than on the Series 2 Alexandria.
The XLF is noticeably larger than its sibling Series 2. The volume of the bass enclosure has increased by 14%, and the speaker now tips the scales at nearly 1,000 pounds per channel.
When you look at the Alexandria, it becomes apparent pretty quickly that considerations of pragmatism and manufacturing simplicity were not considerations for Dave. He'll want to do something and he'll say, well, gosh, that's going to be more difficult to make. And Dave says, well, it's important because it does this thing that I want it to do.
Dave knew what he wanted his new mid-range driver to do after hearing a Mahler symphony in Vienna's famed Musikverein concert hall. With his engineering team, he developed the driver that debuted in the Alexandria Series 2, and which, in variant form, has graced every Wilson floor-standing design since.
It's not that it just appeals to one particular type of listener, but it seems to truly honor the music in a very revealing, very accurate, and yet not at all coldly analytical way.
I think part of its magic is the fact that it really plays the entire scope of the mid-range without any kind of crossover transition, including lower down in the male vocal region.
Well, that then means that the mid-range driver will not go up to 3 or 4 kilohertz linearly. It likes to be crossed over between 1 and 2 kilohertz.
The existing inverted titanium dome tweeter has long proved a successful match for the Wilson mid-range in its ability to play down to the 1 kilohertz region with low distortion and great power handling ability. Dave was willing to trade its lack of ultra-wide bandwidth for characteristics he considered more musically important.
Here at Wilson Audio, we have samples of diamond tweeters and beryllium tweeters and ceramic tweeters and, just a very, very wide spectrum of tweeters. And if one is just looking for frequency response, linearity, and extension, then it would be pretty simple, really. But it's not, because we're looking for dynamic contrast and harmonic expression.
The 3-year quest for a new Alexandria tweeter culminated in a proprietary Wilson design that rejects ultra-wide bandwidth exotics in favor of a new silk dome design that meets all of Dave's critical design goals.
It's very, very linear and full sounding. It crosses over beautifully. It silently kisses the top of the mid-range driver and blends flawlessly with it. Because it has somewhat lower moving mass, its response goes up to over 37 kilohertz. It's still not enough to satisfy those who want to open their garage doors with their tweeters, but
Dave, the ruthless researcher, is always looking for ways that his speakers are less than perfect. And part of that comes from the luxury, the ability to observe many of them out in the field. In the case of the Alexandria, there are over 500 pairs in the world for him to observe.
You could have a loudspeaker that has remarkably linear and extended low frequency response, nevertheless sound quite lean in a given room if the room has a lot of windows and the shape of it is not conducive to low frequency support, and the listener chooses to have the listening chair near the center of the room.
The cross-flow port system on the Alexandria allows the user to choose either a front-firing or rear-firing bass port, depending on room characteristics. The default configuration of the Alexandria XLF is with the bass port to the rear. In rooms where a front-firing port is preferable, it is a simple matter of removing the brushed aluminum cover and installing the port hardware on the front of the bass cabinet. Since he began building speakers in his garage 30 years ago, Dave Wilson has regarded technology as a tool, not to be prized for its own sake, but solely for how well it serves the music. Every addition to the design of the Alexandria XLF was judged by that standard.
For Dave, really, the Alexandria XLF had to be the ultimate expression of Dave's idealism, which is fueled by his passion for the musical event.
I honestly believe that it has advantages with absolutely no disadvantages. There's no area where we've had to compromise the performance, and of course you shouldn't have to, but sometimes that happens in modern designs. A lot of times with high performance automobiles, in order to get more performance in one area, they end up making the car somewhat less involving to drive. But the opposite is true here, where there's more capability and yet it's more involving, it's more rewarding than the Series 2.